Welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, Donald Trump waivers on a second debate.
Meanwhile, officials raise concerns about the post office and mail-in ballots.
And inflation falls to the lowest levels since 2021.
But before all that, let's start with an update on the presidential debate. Former President Trump declared his performance on Tuesday a victory, given the biased nature of ABC's moderation. Here's his reaction on Fox News.
I think we did great. It was 3-1. It was a rigged deal, as I assumed it would be, because when you looked at the fact that they were correcting everything and not correcting with her. But I thought I did a great job. It was 3-1. And I thought I did a great job. Now, we sent you the polls, but every single poll last night had me winning like 90-10.
However, Trump indicated that he's not interested in a second debate, despite Republicans urging him to do a rematch.
Well, you know, when you don't win, it's like a fighter. When a fighter has a bad fight, gets knocked out, or loses the fight, the first thing he says is, we want a rematch. So we won the debate according to every poll, every single poll. I think that, are we going to do a rematch? I just don't know. But we'll think about it.
Now, as I've mentioned, not everybody agrees with this. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz said, quote, "Anytime we get a chance to put President Trump in front of voters to talk about his vision, we think that improves his prospect of success." According to the Washington Examiner, Trump had originally agreed to 3 debates, and people like Gaetz would like to see that come to fruition.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is also taking a victory lap. Yesterday, her campaign posted most of the debate on X, saying our newest ad just dropped. The video cuts off Donald Trump's closing statement, instead replacing it with a photo of the vice president who says, "I approve this message." Now, Harris does have reason to celebrate, as despite Trump's claims, most polls do agree that she won the debate. CNN's flash poll, for example, shows 63% of voters said she won Tuesday night, compared to 37% who said the same about Donald Trump. Chris Wallace, who hosted the first debate between Trump and Biden back in 2020, called it a devastating night for Donald Trump.
I didn't think I was ever going to witness a debate as devastating as the one that you and Dana moderated back in June, where Joe Biden basically tanked his reelection campaign. I think tonight was just as devastating. I think that Kamala Harris pitched a shutout on almost every subject I can think of.
Now, it's expected that Harris will receive some sort of bump in the polls because of the debate, but analysts say the race is far from over. CNN's Harry Enton notes that first-time debate winners don't always go on to win the election.
You may receive a momentary polling bump, but does that mean you're going to go on and win the election? Not necessarily, because the fact is the election's all the way in November, and by my calendar, we're still in September. And look at that. Lost the first debate, but won the election. George W. Bush in 2004 lost that first debate to John Kerry. He won in the fall. How about Barack Obama? We mentioned Mitt Romney earlier. Mitt Romney won that first debate, but Barack Obama won in the fall. And of course, Donald Trump in 2016, he lost that first debate to Hillary Clinton, but he went on to win in the fall.
And there's some evidence that this could be the case this year as well. For example, despite voters largely agreeing that Harris did win the debate, they're actually now less likely to trust her with the economy than before.
Who would better handle the economy is what we asked. Going into the debate, before the debate, 37% said Harris, 53% Trump. After the debate, again, margin of error stuff here, but numerically she lost a little ground. 35% said so after the debate, that she would better handle the economy. 55% said Trump, and we know that is one of his strongest suits across the polling in this election. And he seemed to hang on to that piece in this debate tonight, according to our poll of debate watchers.
And while the actual debate may have favored Harris, a new report from a left-wing publication says much of her policy ideas are a copycat version of President Biden's. The New Republic reported this week that Harris's page source code revealed that parts of the platform were copied directly from Biden's campaign page. The outlet said this is dangerous territory for the presidential candidate. The report referenced a New York Times poll that showed more than 60% of voters were looking for a major change from President Biden, while only a quarter of Harris supporters felt she could be that change. USA Today likewise predicted earlier that Harris would largely run on the same policies as Biden should she be elected president. And while she may not be too different from the president, according to some supporters, she would be a younger, relatable, and hip version of 81-year-old Joe Biden. However, the New Republic wrote that would likely not be enough to differentiate her from her predecessor.
And speaking of the election itself, with mail-in voting about to get underway, concerns are being raised about whether or not the post office is up to the task. This week, two leading election official groups urged the Postmaster General to address widespread problems that already disrupted voting in the primaries. These problems include long delivery times, where local officials are receiving properly postmarked ballots well after Election Day in nearly every state. That's also in addition to many election officials reporting higher than usual rates of ballots being marked as undeliverable as well. Those problems were noted by the National Association of Secretaries of State and the National Association of State Election Directors. They wrote, quote, "We implore you to take immediate and tangible corrective action, saying we have not seen improvement or concerted efforts to remediate our concerns." The post office meanwhile responded, saying it is committed to the timely and secure delivery of the nation's election mail.
And still on the topic of elections, House Speaker Mike Johnson canceled a planned vote in a stopgap bill yesterday that would have required IDs for voter registration. Johnson changed his mind after his party split on the legislation. He expected to come short of 15 Republican votes. But the speaker told reporters he's having family conversations on the issue, and that can take some time.
No vote today, because we're in the consensus building business here in Congress with small majorities. That's what you do. That's what I've been doing since I became Speaker. We're having thoughtful conversations, family conversations within the Republican conference, and I believe we'll get there. So people have concerns about all sorts of things. That's how the process works, and sometimes it takes a little more time.
Johnson added that Congress's two priorities right now are responsible government spending and ensuring free, secure, and fair elections.
We have two obligations right now. Congress has a lot of responsibilities, but two primary obligations. Responsibly fund the government and make sure that our elections are free and fair and secure. And that's what we're working on, and we'll continue. We'll keep you posted.
The government is scheduled to partially shut down on October 1st if a funding agreement isn't reached by then.
And of course, a major topic for this election is inflation, which has apparently cooled to its lowest level in 3 years, but still remains above the Federal Reserve's 2% target rate ahead of planned rate cuts. That's all according to the latest report from the Labor Department, showing the Consumer Price Index rose 2.5% on an annual basis, marking the lowest increase since February of 2021. However, core inflation, which doesn't factor in food and energy prices, is a bit stickier, clocking in at 3.2%. On the whole, it's a welcome news for the Federal Reserve, as it now plans to cut interest rates next week. According to the Washington Examiner, some expect a standard 0.25 percentage point cut, while others believe it could be as much as a half of a point cut. This comes as the interest rates currently sit as a 2-decade high. All right, and up next, President Biden now faces mounting pressure to lift restrictions on Ukraine. The details after this.
Tragically, and all too often, a young mother in an unplanned pregnancy is in crisis. Pressured from others and without the support of the father of the baby, she feels alone, compelled into making a heartbreaking decision she will regret her whole life. But she is not alone. You can be there for her by giving a life-changing ultrasound through Preborn. Seeing her baby on ultrasound is a game changer, doubling the chances she will choose life from 40% to 80%. For only $28 a month, less than $1 a day, you can show a mom her baby on ultrasound. Your love can save a preborn baby and give a lifetime of joy. Give your tax-deductible gift today. Call pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.org/TV.
Well, in our journey through history, let's explore one of the most famous physical pieces of history in the world. This structure was the original sports arena, as it were, at least in the Western world, and it would serve as a model for modern-age professional sports stadiums. Now, the sports that took place in this stadium, though, were vastly different from baseball or football. They were life and death battles, killing for sport and for entertainment for the Roman aristocracy.
To watch more episodes of A Moment in History, go to FISM.tv.
What can you tell our listeners about the benefits of being a partner?
It's blessed me with an opportunity to help further the kingdom in a small way, which matters a lot because God takes small things and makes them big. The blessing really has been to be able to take care of my family, but also take care of the kingdom. Going to bed knowing that not only are you correctly managing your investments, but you're doing it in a God-honoring way.
Welcome back to FISM News. Once again, I'm Renata Kiss. Well, a top foreign policy Democrat in the Senate is now pressuring President Biden to reverse policy that prevents Ukraine from using American weapons to strike Russian territory. Senator Ben Cardin said yesterday that Ukrainian forces need greater flexibility in defending themselves. He added that it's heartbreaking to see recent Russian attacks against civilian areas and energy infrastructure.
It's time to allow Ukraine to be able to defend itself against these air attacks in a more effective way, and the United States needs to be the leader in that regard.
Top House Republicans on Monday urged President Biden to ease restrictions, saying Russia should not have a sanctuary while committing war crimes. This comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken and British Foreign Secretary David Lammy announced nearly $1.5 billion in new aid to Ukraine following a visit to Kyiv. The U.S. Secretary also said he expects Biden and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss the issue of long-range missile strikes while meeting tomorrow in Washington.
And speaking of aid, the U.S. announced $1.3 billion in military aid for Egypt this week, lifting previous restrictions over human rights concerns in the country. Secretary of State Blinken cited national security interests in this decision as it comes as Cairo has figured heavily in Gaza ceasefire negotiations, which have so far been unsuccessful. Egypt is accused of holding political prisoners, and a recent government report found there were no significant changes in the human rights situation in Egypt as of last year. $320 million, or roughly 1/4 of the aid being offered, is to be conditional on alleviating these human rights concerns. However, Senator Chris Murphy, a leading Democrat on Middle East policy, he criticized this decision to lift restrictions, saying there's no reason to ignore that Egypt remains a deeply repressive autocratic state. At the same time, Blinken is also now demanding the Israeli military change how it operates in the West Bank after soldiers killed a Turkish-American citizen. The Israeli military has called the killing an accident, however, saying soldiers were aiming at a key instigator, in their words, behind the protester. But that response just wasn't good enough for Blinken, who called the shooting itself unacceptable.
No one should have to put their life at risk just for freely expressing their views. In our judgment, Israeli security forces need to make some fundamental changes in the way that they operate in the West Bank, including changes to their rules of engagement.
President Biden said in a statement that he was outraged by the incident in what is now the harshest comment from the White House on the protester's death to date. Meanwhile, Turkey has opened an investigation and plans to request international arrest warrants over the incident.
And while the West is trying to rein in Israel, Hamas hauls in $500 million from humanitarian aid entering Gaza. Newsweek reports that the terror group is estimated to have profited $500 million from aid meant for Gaza's war-torn population. Channel 12 reports that about 200 aid trucks enter the area daily, and their deliveries have become the main oxygen pipeline for the terrorist organization. The local news outlet says that Hamas steals the aid and then sells it to the population. They then use that money to fund Hamas recruitment. As a result, 3,000 fighters have been added to Hamas in northern Gaza. Now, this comes as the U.S. has recently sanctioned oil smugglers accused of raising funds for Iran-backed Hezbollah as well. Similar to Hamas, Hezbollah raises hundreds of millions of dollars for the Iranian-backed militants through their operations. All right, and we have plenty more news coming up next, but we'll be right back after a moment in history.
welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, at the turn of the 19th century, the Western world was changing, and America was at the forefront of the change. Two industrial revolutions in the previous century had overhauled the country from being an old-world agrarian sort of nation to a much more factory-driven cityscape of industry and technological innovation. Similarly, a bloody civil war had crushed and then rebuilt the nation from a collection of states to one national identity. At the head of all this came the last president to sit in the White House during the 19th century and the last Civil War veteran to lead the nation. He was William McKinley, the 25th president of the United States. Following a flurry of somewhat forgettable names in the presidency, McKinley proved to be a capable leader during his 4+ years in office. He was born in 1843, and unlike almost all presidents before him, his pre-presidential career was that of a school teacher. That is, until he joined the Union side during the American Civil War as a young man. After the victory in the war, McKinley married his wife and became an attorney. He entered politics in his mid-30s, where he served in the House of Representatives for almost a decade and a half. He won the 1896 election, and during his time in office, he accomplished two notable feats. The first was guiding the United States out of the panic of 1893, and the second was leading the country through its first war since the brutal Civil War some 30 years earlier, the Spanish-American War. On the international stage, McKinley had the chance to show how the remade United States would fare against a foreign foe, and the president and the nation lived up to the task. The war lasted only 3.5 months, seeing the United States expand its territory as a global power. McKinley won a second term in the 1900 election and appeared on course for another positive 4 years, but his presidency and his life were sadly cut short when he was shot at the World's Fair Expo in Buffalo, New York. He died of his wounds just over a week later at the age of 58. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Hey there, and welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We're going to kick off this segment here with a quick weather update, where southern Louisiana was left in the dark earlier today after Hurricane Francine knocked out power for an estimated 390,000 people after making landfall as a Category 2 storm. Its powerful storm surge has also caused flooding along the coastlines in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. In fact, the situation became so dangerous in places that emergency services were forced to shut down except for extreme life-threatening situations. Francine has since weakened down to a tropical storm and is now moving towards Tennessee.
And still in national news, we go to FISM's Ian Patrick for some special coverage regarding the 23rd anniversary of the September 11 attacks.
Yesterday's ceremony honoring the victims of the September 11th, 2001 attacks came during another harrowing milestone regarding that fateful day. The New York City Fire Department added 32 names to the World Trade Center Memorial Wall last week. Those members had succumbed to illnesses related to their work and rescue operations following the attacks. The addition of these 32 names means that the number of victims who have died due to illnesses from September 11th, 2001 now outnumbers the amount of victims on the day of the attack itself. In fact, FDNY says that 343 of its members perished during the day of the attacks. And as of yesterday, 377 department members have lost their lives from related illnesses. Fire Commissioner Robert S. Tucker acknowledged those who have succumbed to these illnesses during a remembrance event last week.
We will mark the 23rd anniversary of September 11th. As we do every year, we will reflect on the 343 members who died that day, and we will be sobered in knowing that those insurmountable losses did not end at the World Trade Center site. Instead, we've seen our members become sick because of time they spent working in rescue and recovery. We have seen them, more than 360 members, die because of their bravery and selflessness.
Since the attack, many of those at or near Ground Zero have been diagnosed with diseases, including cancer in some cases, as a result of exposure to toxic dust during rescue and first response operations. Yesterday's ceremony brought New Yorkers together to honor all of the fallen heroes who had sacrificed so much on that day. They read the names of those whose lives were taken and held multiple moments of silence out of respect. And as we reported yesterday, even some political officials, including former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden, attended this event in New York and offered their condolences to families. However, not every family was thrilled with President Biden at the time. The day before, he made a remark about his attendance at the event.
I'm going up to my granddaughter's birthday in New York. Then we're going to watch a debate. And then tomorrow I'm doing 9/11.
Biden's quip of doing 9/11 did not really sit well with some of the families, and one of the presenters during the ceremony even called him out on it.
On September 11, 2001, 2,977 innocent people were murdered by radical Islamic terrorists. My husband of 30 years was one of them. It is outrageous that our government would ever entertain the thought of granting the terrorists a plea deal. If not for the outcry of the 9/11 community, who knows what might have transpired. It has been 23 years, and the families deserve justice and accountability. The elected officials here today show their respect and reverence to the families on September 11th. Or, in our president's words, do 9/11. Quite a flippant remark. But please remember that the September 11th families live it every day, not just on the anniversary.
Biden was later present at a site in Pennsylvania, also in honor of the victims from the 9/11 attack. And we here at FISM are eternally grateful for those who gave their lives so courageously on that day. And for those of you who have family members or loved ones whose lives were unfortunately taken as a result of that day, whether through illness or from the attack itself, we thank you for your strength and your courage as well. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
We join Ian in thanking you indeed, and thank you, Ian, for that report. Meanwhile, it seems like Biden isn't the only one making unsavory comments, as yesterday, White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby dismissed military veterans who criticized the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. Kirby accidentally replied all to a Fox News request for comment, writing, "Obviously no use in responding, a, quote, handful of vets indeed, and all of one stripe." Now, this email appears to have been meant for White House staffers only. Yesterday was both the 23rd anniversary of 9/11 as well as the 3rd anniversary of President Biden's deadline for a full troop withdrawal. Fox was seeking a response to 4 veterans who were criticizing Kirby for defending the Biden administration's role in the pullout, saying he mixed the truth with lies. One of these veterans said the withdrawal will be studied for generations as the epitome of failure.
At the same time, a Harris campaign spokesperson evaded questions about the presidential candidate's alleged plans to cut border security funding while funding trans surgeries for migrants. When spokesperson Michael Tyler was asked if Harris still supports these plans, he said these issues are simply a distraction.
Listen, I think, these old questionnaires are a complete distraction from the task at hand right now. I think the vice president, and frankly, what the American people are actually asking about, right? What the American people are concerned about and what they're asking about is who's going to solve for border security.
A recent CNN report revealed that in 2019, Harris indicated in an ACLU questionnaire that she would enact sweeping reductions to ICE funding and that she would decriminalize fentanyl possession for personal use. In addition, the report said that Harris also planned to use taxpayer money to fund transgender surgeries for migrants, a plan that was reportedly circulated among politicians in 2020. CNN says the Harris campaign declined to elaborate on what her positions were when they asked about the candidate's progressive policies.
Still in culture here in the fight for life, a disturbing new study found that dozens of Christian-affiliated colleges and universities across the country also have ties to abortion. That report, released by Students for Life of America, reviewed 732 schools that are, quote, affiliated with a Christ-centered denomination and publicly claimed historical Christian faith in its founding. It found that 83 of them have one or more ties to the abortion industry, including connections to Planned Parenthood, although it should be noted that at least some of these aren't traditionally what would be considered a Christian school, but rather have a Christian heritage based on their founding. That includes schools such as Duke and Emory universities, but that's not necessarily true of all of them. SFLA President Kirsten Hawkins posted on X, quote, "We must demand these institutions sever all connections with abortion providers immediately and fully commit to the pro-life values they were founded on. True Christians cannot support abortion."
And finally, finishing with some good news here, Live Action reports that Safe Haven baby boxes are saving lives. CEO of Safe Haven Baby Boxes, Monica Kelsey, said that a selfless parent chose to surrender legally, safely, lovingly their infant late last week at the Woodburn Fire Department. She went on to say that so far her organization has saved the lives of over 200 babies. The program was designed to prevent needless tragic deaths as a result of abortions. All the mother has to do is place her baby in a temperature-controlled box, which then locks and sends out an alert. The baby then receives help in under 2 minutes. If the mother or father changes their mind and wants to keep the baby, they can do so within 30 to 45 days. Kelsey, who started the organization 8 years ago, says she never would have thought it would take off in Indiana.
I actually remember when we first reported on that here on FISM News. So that's really cool to see how it's growing and how it's really saved hundreds of lives. That's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first time I've heard about something like this was in South Korea, where a pastor did the same thing. So I'm glad that it's now taking root here too.
That's great. It's a worldwide thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for any updates until tomorrow's show, you can follow us on social media at FISM News. Thank you so much. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night.